you. And also present, besides our auditor, Cheryl Wright, we have Councilor Elliott, Councilor Laurie, Councilor Mercer, and Councilor Noon. And we also have our CFO, Tom Moses, sitting in that gallery. All right, first, this is the inaugural meeting of the Clerk Auditor Oversight Subcommittee. We're just dealing with the auditor this evening. And since this is the initial meeting, I have handed out the part of the city charter that defines the role of the auditor to the subcommittee members, along with the job posting from the last time they had a hiring. And it's just for educational purposes for the subcommittee to understand what the auditor is supposed to do. And I'm sure I can make that available to the others, but it's basically Chapter 28 of the city charter, so it's available online. And at this point, I'll ask the auditor if she would like to give us a synopsis of her job duties related to the job description. I know you also gave us a handout of state requirements for the auditor, so if you want to briefly go over those, that would be fine as well.
I think the easiest way to do this is actually to go through the job posting itself, where it doesn't seem all that long, but each one of these sentences encompasses a lot. If we go first, and we actually start with the essential duties and responsibilities. I'm responsible for coordinating and overseeing the development, installation, and maintenance of a central municipal accounting system involved in the control and summarization of the financial transactions and all accounts of all municipal departments, including the public school department. In a nutshell, what that means is I'm in charge of the accounting system. We utilize Munis as an accounting system. What we have for a chart of accounts is the UMAS chart of accounts. That's the state-mandated chart of accounts. We need to use this chart of accounts in order to present the state with all our reporting. They require reporting in that format. So, our chart of accounts is set up as UMAS. We have Munis. Munis, the core of Munis is the general ledger. All modules feed into the general ledger. The general ledger is the chart of accounts with all your funds in it, with all your control accounts in it, and with all your reporting mechanisms. When I say outside modules, I mean we have a tax module. The assessors feed vision software and all your values into the tax module, create the tax bills. The tax bills are given to the treasurer's office. All that feeds into my general ledger through the appropriate mechanisms. So everything feeds in, whether it be utility billing feeds in, the payroll feeds in, billing of all nature feeds in. So I have to keep the control of the general ledger to make sure every single transaction that goes through the city is recorded properly. That means every payroll that goes out, every accounts payable, every vendor check that goes out, there's about 20,000 vendor checks per year, go through the system appropriately. They get charged to the right account, and all proper documentation is in it. As far as the cash receipts are concerned, cash receipts come in through the treasurer's office, through the tax module or the cash receipt module. They make sure that they go to the right taxpayer. All that gets fed into my general ledger. We balance all the batches. The batches go into the general ledger. So we have to make sure in total all those are correct. Regular cash receipts, all cash receipts are given to them with turn-in sheets. The turn-in sheets, after the treasurer posts, the turn-in sheets come to my office. We release them to the general ledger, making sure they're hitting all the correct accounts. So that's a summary of the accounting system itself. Okay. Recommend the development, installation, and functional supervision of the accounting systems for all departments, making sure that they're all feeding in correctly. Each department, whether it be the assessors or the tax collectors, all the other offices, whether it be the water billing, sewer billing, trash, make sure that all those systems are feeding in correctly to the general ledger. I plan development and review procedures for periodic field post-audits and special studies of financial transactions, accounts, and accounting systems for all municipal departments, for trustees of public property, where any part is given for public use. We plan together, all department heads. What are we going to do? How are we going to do it? How are we going to lay it out? And how is it going to feed into the accounting system? I direct investigations of irregularities in accounts or inadequacies in accounting systems of any municipal department. Well, that's like what I did, the forensic audit for the parking department. Direct continuing pre-audits of all municipal payrolls and accounts payable. We don't pay any payrolls out until we have proper documentation. We don't pay out any invoices without proper documentation. We're the ultimate check. Checks won't go out the door unless everything is there. Whether the contract has to be in place, the purchase order has to be in place, proper documentation for invoicing, proper signage, sign-offs by all the department heads, everything has to be there before it goes out the door. Approve warrants for payment of all valid claims against the city. That's basically what I just explained. Certified as to the availability of unencumbered appropriation balances sufficient to cover purchases and contracts. Every single contract that goes to the city comes through my office. Every single contract has to have an account number on it. That's something I instituted. I will not sign off without the contract, without the account number there. Then I check the account to make sure that the funds are there to pay. So it's not a valid account or a valid contract until I sign off on it. The only difference is contractual negotiations, employment contracts, that I don't sign off for the funding, but I can't pay it without funding. So it's kind of like, six of one, half a dozen of the other. Furnish advice, expertise, and assistance on municipal fiscal affairs to the city council and city manager. Whatever I can do to help. Responsible for the preparation of periodic, monthly, and annual statements of municipal fiscal affairs, preparation of financial orders of the city council, preparation of a comprehensive annual financial report, assist in outside audits, and select outside auditors. Basically, my general ledger gives off all the reports that we need. So when I give off the monthly or the quarterly reports, it's off the financial system. Now here, assist the outside audits. I do all the schedules that the auditors need. I pull all the information together. I do more spreadsheets for the auditors than you'd ever believe, whether it be the receivables or all the transfers in and out for the year. Make it as easy as possible and pull all the information into one central location for the audits. And I select the auditors. Now that we can discuss moving forward. Attend or participate in staff development, city council, and other meetings, conferences, or committees. Maintain contacts to keep abreast of developments in the field or areas or interest of expertise. Well, tax law is changing all the time. When tax laws change, we have to change our payroll and how we do payroll. There's a couple new tax laws coming into effect this year that we're in the process of implementing. The fact that you have to put not only health deductions from the employee, we're going to have to put the employer on your W-2s this year too. And seeing we split the year with the type of insurance we have, we're actually doing schedules, and we're going to have to do some conversions in order to do that the way that they require us. So, Direct, instruct, assist, check, and train subordinates directly or through subordinate supervision as to schedules, methods, procedures. It's just teaching my staff what to do. Maintain discipline and harmonious personal relations within the office. Serve as a member of the retirement board. Prepare and maintain local, state, federal records, reports, documents, which would be the Schedule A that I have to do every year. All the schedules for the auditors, free cash certifications, the balance sheet for the end of the year, and all those records that are required by the state. Perform other duties as set by statute, the city ordinance. I have a brief summary of all the statutes that I have to uphold and all the city ordinances that I have to uphold. And directly supervise, it says 13 employees, I now have 7. So we're doing more with less, or as much as we can with less. Those are the basics of what I have to do on a daily basis. You know, when payroll, it comes time to sometimes looking at contracts, making sure that we're adhering to contracts, not sitting in on labor negotiations, but actually trying to interpret some of the contracts and sitting with law to interpret them, and sometimes sitting with union representatives to go through what they actually say. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
So to summarize, all the revenues come into the city have to be accounted through your office.
Correct.
Payroll is done through your office.
Correct.
For all the city departments.
Correct.
And any contract expense the city incurs, over $100, I believe, you have to confirm and validate that there is funding in the budget for that expense.
Correct. Actually, the purchase orders that go through the system, we approve first to make sure, like if there's things that don't require a contract, all the purchase orders come through my office to approve it for funding and for the accounts, and then the contracts behind them.
Okay, anyone on the committee have any questions about the job description and role?
I have just,
Counselor Kennedy?
I have 2 questions. This is the job description that you had back in 2006, and it said there were 13 employees, so now there's 7, you said.
Correct.
What happened to the other 6?
Through attrition,
All of them through attrition?
I believe so. Well, no, actually, I believe one I had to let go, but we did not backfill.
Well, that's, okay. And at a previous city council meeting a few months ago, back in the previous fiscal year, I asked you about providing the city council with bi-monthly reports.
Yes,
And so how's that going?
I'll give you August, because I gave you June. So I'll give you August.
The one in June, I considered to be sort of a year end. That was the one that we had during the budget, was that?
Yes,
Okay,
but that was after I closed everything. There was one more
I-
transaction that went through.
okay. And when should we expect the August one?
I'd say your first meeting in September, I should have it.
Okay. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Martin?
Thank you. I'm looking at not so much the job description, but the printout from the Department of Revenue,
Yes,
which talks about accountant.
yes,
And I know in towns, at least this is my understanding, in towns, the common vernacular, I guess, is the town accountant.
correct. Controller, accountant, auditor, it's all the same position.
All right, so the Department of Revenue puts out this guidance, there's many more towns, there are only 31 cities, so they use that terminology, but if you look at each one of these statutes, these duties apply in a city to the city auditors.
Correct.
Right, so, okay, thank you.
Counselor Mercer?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just ask our city auditor, Did you mention anything about enterprise funds? How do you handle those?
Oh, yes, just like, it's like just another fund
Oh, it's
within my
another
chart of accounts.
Right.
But it's kept separately in its own fund. It's like the general fund, all the accounting requirements of the
But
general
it's
fund.
separate, isn't it?
It's separate, correct.
And do you handle like other funds, like McKinney funds and things
I
like that?
handle every fund that's in the city.
You do?
We had, when I got here, we had over 1,036 funds. I think I have it down to like 700. Instead of setting up projects, my predecessor would set up a fund when, project accounting comes into play, so you don't need as many funds as we have. So as I can close down funds, I'm closing them, because it makes it easier for departments, for the treasurer to reconcile, for everybody, or for all departments to know what they have, what accounts they have. Instead of keeping track of a million different funds, they have a set.
So when we approve of a budget, fiscal 13 budget,
Yes,
that money gets dispersed into, right back to 100% of those areas?
correct. What I didn't explain is, the general ledger has a subsidiary ledger. Those are the budgets you see for your enterprise funds for the general ledger. Each of those, again, feed into the general ledger, and they have control accounts that control all the activities within those funds.
And this is all set up on Munis?
Correct. Utilizing the state's chart of accounts.
But how long have you been the auditor now? How many years?
This is my 6th year. I'm
Okay,
in my 6th year.
so back in your beginning of your 6th year, it wasn't that defined and easy, was it? It wasn't in
When I
place?
first got here?
Right.
When I first got here,
It wasn't in place like that.
it was, but it wasn't being utilized correctly. They were using agency funds when they shouldn't have been using agency funds. They didn't have purchase orders set up, so they would take expenses at the end of the year instead of putting up a purchase order for it and rolling the money into the new year. They put it off in an agency fund and would expend it outside of the general fund budget. Some of the things I found were actually incredible. They were balancing receivables off of accounts payable. Now, that probably means nothing to you, but let me tell you, it's something you do not do. Accounts receivable are the list of accounts in people that owe us money. Accounts payable are the list of bills that we have to be paid. So we went through quite a bit to dig through everything to get the accounting in order. It took us a while. But it was worth it at the end. Things are in order now.
Things are in order. That's what
Absolutely.
you like to hear, things are in order.
And there were things like, on the payroll system, about the old holdback? The schools, what they would do is, you get your choice, 42 or 52. Actually, there's some 43s, but we won't even talk about those. If somebody chose to get paid for 53 pays, they would only pay them for 42 pays. And each week, they would deduct an amount from your paycheck and stick it in a separate account. Now, Mass State teachers had a big problem with this because...
They did. I remember.
Yeah, it was crazy what they were doing. And they had done that since they set up Munis. They had done that on the Wang system. And I got here and I said, why are you doing this? Well, that's the only way we can pay them. I said, no, that's not the only way you can pay them. So we had to sit with the school department and explain what was going on and how we could straighten it out so that the state teachers would be.
Well, I will tell you that many years ago, it was quite often that I would receive a phone call from a teacher retiring, and what she was expecting was not what she was getting. And it was so unbelievable that we had a mass meeting in the mayor's reception room just to try to straighten this out. And I will say, since you took over, I haven't had a call at all. So I'm impressed by that, because whatever you're sending down to the state, it's actually coinciding to be the right amount. And I haven't received a single call, and I'm impressed by that fact as it is. So I just wanted to say that publicly. Thank you.
Well, and the other thing I did with payroll too was the accruals were not up on the system. We were not accounting for our sick, vacation, and personal days on the system. All right? Departments were just keeping it in their little desk drawers with their little list. Well, now it's put on the payroll system. So it helps me at the end of the year for the accruals for the auditors, but it helps each individual because you can look at your paycheck and see what you have left. And you know what? If something's wrong, which everybody makes mistakes, you can see and go and get it fixed right away. Because when I first got here, we had instances, well, I didn't take 3 weeks vacation 10 years ago, and it's like, and you want me to do what? I mean, I had no records. So now all the records, well, I shouldn't say all of them, the school department has their own X2 system that they keep theirs on, but they give me reports on a yearly basis. Everybody else is on the system. And that was fun to implement too. But again, it was the right thing to do.
That's all I have, Cheryl. Thanks.
Councilor Martin?
Just on that point, the vacation, though, isn't that a new standard now that we have to accrue for that time?
Yes, we do. And
what-
it was a management issue, and it's one of the things the state suggested we did, so that's one of the first things I did.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilor Laurie?
Thank you. The question that I have, it just came off, listening to the conversation with Councilor Marcia. The sick leave and vacation time was kept by department heads?
Yes.
What about the payroll? You get a check every week on the back, it says how much you make, how many hours you worked. It didn't show that?
No, it didn't. No, it didn't.
No.
There was no central accounting for it. So now we, it's set up by union and by years of service, so automatically it puts it on your payroll when you accrue time. They put it on the payroll sheet. When you take time, it subtracts it. I mean, it's good for everybody. It's a win-win.
No, not that I suggest we go back 6 years, but as Councilor Martin was just saying, we pay on the vacation leave when you retire. What's the possibility that we overpaid down the line in the past?
I can't even comment on that.
I don't think I've ever seen a system where it wasn't tracked on the payroll.
Right, well, it wasn't when I got here.
That was my only question, thank you.
Any other questions about the job description? Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on vacation time, that goes for the city manager as well?
Correct.
Time's accrued
Yes.
and you track that?
Correct.
Right. Okay, I've asked for reports twice on what he has taken and what he has accrued. Is there some reason why?
Did
And
you ask
I
it?
think I asked it through I know you were here, I probably should have directed it towards you, but I've asked at least on 2 occasions, maybe 3 on the status of it. So that is something I should be directing towards you because he's not giving it to me. Okay. Could you please get me that information? I don't know if I
Certainly
need to make
can.
that in the form of a motion, but I just want to know. I mean, I think
Sure.
everybody it's being accounted for through the system, and I had no reason to doubt that it wasn't, but I just think it's important for us as his 9 bosses to at least know what the status of that is. Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, we have several memos that were referred to the subcommittee, so I'll take them in the order that they are on the agenda. The first one is relatively brief. It's about the fourth quarter cash controls review, in which it reports that a check was done in the clerk's office and that no anomalies were found. Anyone have any questions about that, or I'll move on to the next one? No? All set. All right, the next one is the quote of the forensic audit, and this was actually a memo from back in the fall. In which it relates that there were 2 quotes, one from Powers and Sullivan and another one from Heath and Melanson, both of which were around or just below $105,000 each. Or am I in the wrong one?
The forensic audit was the one I got from Powers and Sullivan on the parking,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, that's the one.
And then I had just given you the one sheet
Yes. Okay. Do you
Back
want to
from
speak to
November.
that briefly? About the forensic audit. I know
forensic-
we discussed it at the meeting already.
Right. The forensic audit, I just got you a quote, if you had wanted Powers and Sullivan to go in and do the forensic audit like I had done, gone through every single cash receipt. But basically, that's what I did, but I didn't know if you in fact had wanted a third party to do it. So I just gave you the opportunity and got the quote from Powers and Sullivan if they wanted to go in
And
and see.
if
you
we had
didn't-
proceeded with a forensic audit, and we have recovered all the monies
Correct, correct.
we believe we were owed, it would have cost us another $25,000.
Correct.
All right. Does anyone else have questions on
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy?
I was disappointed with the report that came from Sullivan regarding central parking. I thought in previous discussions that we had regarding central parking that Powers and Sullivan were going to do their own separate audit, and that they were going to focus on central parking, and that it was going to be part of the larger contract that they have to do the annual audit with the city. The report that they gave the city council at the last city council meeting was not an audit, and it was really just a report that summarized what had gone on. And the information that was contained in that was information that anybody could have written up if they had read your audit and Mr. Herbert's report. So I guess I'm wondering if that's what they intend. What is the level of, will they focus on when they do certain departments? That's not, I was expecting a lot more than that. Now, Mr. Sullivan's presentation before the city council was very informative and a lot better, although I think that he said a couple of things that proved to be erroneous, that they just didn't, they contradicted what Mr. Herbert had said. But I'm not taking issue with any of that, but I am taking issue with that report that they gave. I don't know how everybody else felt about it, but I was just very disappointed in what they did. And the reason I was disappointed is because you led me to believe, or at least the way I understood it from you, that they were going to do their own separate audit, so that when the issue first broke, my understanding was you were doing an audit, they were doing an audit, and Central Parking was doing their own audit. And I didn't know whether or not we'd get the Central Parking audit or not, but I did expect the other two. And really, it seems that Powers and Sullivan really just looked at what you did and Mr. Herbert did and just wrote it up from that. That's not, to me, we could have 5 other people do the same thing. That's nothing special and it's not different. The only value in having Powers and Sullivan do something separate was that it was a different set of eyes than yours. If it's going to be the same, then what's the point?
Well, the thing was, under their comprehensive audit, that would only do 2012 as part of the 2012 audit. This went back in time. So that's why they put forward the quote for the forensic audit to go all the way back to 2008.
No, that's not my point. It's, you indicated that they were going to do their own separate audit. The report that they gave us was not an audit. It was a summary. You agree with that, right?
Yes, I do.
So, did you misunderstand what they were going to do, or did they misunderstand what they were supposed to do, or how did that come about?
I thought they were going to do the forensic audit, and I thought the council had realized that it was going to be additional costs.
I don't think the council realized it was going to be additional costs, because when you told us about the new contract that they had for 3 years, it was that they were going to do their annual audit, which was the overview like they've been doing every year, and then they would focus on and do a more complete or in-depth audit on 2 or 3 or 4, maybe you said 5 departments, I don't know, but say 4 departments. Then, I thought what was going on was that they were doing the audit on central parking premature. Instead of waiting for the fall, they were gonna do it now because we needed it
Correct.
now. And that's what I understood from you, but that is not what happened.
What I said was they were going in and do the comprehensive audit now instead of waiting till November, which is what they did, which is like a site visit, but just looking at 12. And what I had said was, and I'll see what the cost will be to go in and do a complete forensic from them. And that's why I brought forth this quote from them, to see if you wanted to do that.
Okay.
They went as far as they could under their regular contract, and that's like a site visit and what they say comprehensive, reviewing all the policies and procedures versus going in like I did and going through every single transaction.
So the report that they did on central parking that they gave the city council at the last city council meeting, is that what we can expect as an in-depth audit on the
Comprehensive.
departments?
Correct.
That's it?
Yes.
That's all we're gonna get? I don't even consider that to be an audit, really. I really don't. I don't know why, and I would bet they don't either. I really think that was just a summary. Am I mistaken? Do you think that was an audit, what they gave us? I mean, you must have looked at it.
I read it, and it looks like that they just reviewed all the policies and procedures and traced a few transactions. They didn't go in and do every transaction. And I don't think under their
Well,
kind of
why didn't they
contract,
include that in the document then?
I don't know.
Okay, but don't you think, I'm sure that you got a copy of that report
Yes.
before the city council.
Yes.
All right, and so when you looked at it, did you have any questions for them about how complete it was or how in-depth it was?
I basically was still looking at my own at the time, and I reviewed it, and okay, yes, that's the procedures that I found, but it was up to them to present to the council their findings.
Okay.
Council Martin?
Thank you. Ms. Wright, so can you describe, as I understand this, powers and, they come in, they do an audit, something we call an audit anyway,
Right.
whether that's proper terminology or not, but they audit the city's books every year, right?
Correct.
And so, and they do whatever they do to produce the document that says, at least in my mind, what we're looking for is that our financial accounts are free from material misstatement, right?
Correct.
That's the opinion they give. And so, and what do they do? Leave the parking department aside, pick another department, Parks and Rec or something, or, what do they do when they go in to review that department in order to give that opinion?
What they do is go in and they test transactions. They don't go through every single transaction. They test the accounting system, they test the transactions, because of the size of the transactions, what they call, what is material, what isn't material.
Right.
They'll have thresholds, and they'll randomly pick, I'll give them like the general ledger with all the transactions, and they randomly pick transactions to test, whether it be a contract, whether it be a purchase order, whether it be an invoice, whether it be a cash receipt. They'll do the amount of testing they need to do according to the standards that they have to uphold.
All right. So they're going to do that, I assume they're not in yet for 2012, or?
They're coming in October.
All right, so they're going to do that citywide across the city.
Correct.
But we asked them to come in early with respect to the parking department?
Correct.
To do that same level of review, at least for 2012?
We asked them to do the more comprehensive on the parking, which includes all their policies and procedures, but does not include all their transactions. And it would only be for 12, because it's the audit for 12.
Right, but do they do test?
Yes.
Like test transactions, and if, I assume if you find irregularities, then you keep looking?
Correct.
All right, so they did, at least for 2012, the level that they would do citywide.
Yes.
And
And more so-
probably-
and more so.
and more so because we're asking them to look in-depth at a couple of different departments every year.
Correct.
All right, and is there another one identified for this year besides parking?
Yes.
Oh, but we can't say, right? Is that, oh, fair enough, okay.
Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was under impression that when the parking issue came about, that you, Madam Auditor, were going to conduct auditing of the parking department, and the independent, the Powell and Sullivan is going to also do the auditing as well as the central parking. So 3 entities conducting this auditing. What I heard just now is that the report that was provided or that was done by the Powell and Sullivan was not an auditing. Is that correct?
It's a more comprehensive as part of the original contract, not a complete forensic audit. They wanted more money to do the complete forensic audit because it included all the way back to 2008 and all the transactions.
But was it an audit? Was it an auditing or just a summary of the report that you have compiled as well as Mr. Herbert?
I don't believe they saw my report. I mean, they did theirs independently. When this all came about, I took and I gathered all the source documents and had them available to Powers and Sullivan, to Central Parking's auditors, and I utilized the same
And did we,
documents.
thank you, did we get a report from the central parking yet, the auditing report that the
don't
central
know if
parking is
it's-
doing?
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure if it's out yet.
And when,
Expected any time. We expected it last.
and when do you think that we're going to get it? Because it's been week and month.
I'll have to find out.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you have more questions? Councilor Elliott?
Thank you, Councilor Noon asked a question. So we don't know what the status of the central parking audit is? Why don't we?
Because they're doing it independently. It could be out, I'm not sure.
Well, who would know? I mean,
I
this,
would think Mr. Herbert?
I think I had a brief conversation with Mr. Herbert and their auditors. We called up to find out what the status was, and this was maybe 2 weeks ago, and they expected it in a week, but I haven't seen it since.
well, I guess I'm disappointed nobody knows what's going on with their audit. I mean, not that I don't think it's going to disclose anything significant. I think we've had a couple audits. I don't disagree with Councilor Kennedy with that, the report that Powers and Sullivan, I thought Mr. Hebert's report was much more detailed and much more informative and much more in-depth. It provided the information that we needed. But putting that aside, it's hard to understand why we don't know what's going on with central parking. The manager sat here a couple of weeks ago and said, well, they've been very forthcoming, they've been very cooperative, and yet we don't know what's going on with that audit. And if everyone else can produce an audit, how come they can't produce theirs and in a timely manner? Who's on top of this? Who's the contact person? Is it Mr. Hebert? Is it you? Is it?
It was Mr. Hebert, or Mr. Herbert, but
Herbert, sorry, Mr. Herbert.
when we talked to them, we said, when can we expect the audit? They said in about a week. We asked where it was, and they said the auditors had finished and it was going through their legal department. Each firm has their own internal policies, and I don't see where it's appropriate for the city to say, how their lawyers review their internal documents. The fact that they're willing to share the document with us is something.
Mr. Miller, could you follow up on that and try to get a copy to the city council as soon as
Sure.
possible?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilor Elliott, continue.
Well, I think that our lawyers, considering their employee stole the money from the city and the taxpayers that we would be a little bit more aggressive, and if they are being cooperative, then why aren't we getting it? I mean, we're in the driver's seat. I mean, we should be telling them what to do, not kind of being beholden to them. Well, they're going to give it and share it with us when they so desire. But I just want to go, it would be helpful to find out, when and if they're going to get us that information. But can you, we're still on the audit, right, or the whole parking issue?
Well, we're doing that forensic audit memo right now.
So when that information came to us, and I will be brief because we've discussed this, and I did listen to Mr. Sullivan. I did read your memo that inevitably we were going to probably find this, but this system went in place in 2008. Why didn't we, if Powers and Sullivan, they come in, they're supposed, I understand they don't do all transactions, they're supposed to come in and test and primarily focus on policies and internal controls. Why do you feel they did not find this until, luckily, and I firmly believe this, an anonymous person came forward? Why didn't they find this in the last or the prior 4 fiscal years that this system was in place?
I can't answer that. I don't know what they tested. They go out to the field, they do the testing, so I'm not sure.
Now, okay, if they didn't, knowing there's a new system in place, didn't you think it would be incumbent upon you to tell them, or you and your staff to look at the process to make sure that it is bulletproof and that the system is working? And didn't you think isn't that your responsibility?
Well, I knew that the treasurer met with them when they were setting up the new accounts, and he was reviewing the turn-in policy for the new kiosks.
And when was that meeting?
When they set up in 2008,
So in 2008. So in 2008, we set up new accounts. No one thought to ask about the software. Did you ask about the software that was in place, and was it operational?
I wasn't in that meeting. It was between the treasurer and the director when they were setting it all up, and I know that they had set up the turn-in policy for the new kiosks. So I had assumed that the treasurer would know what was required as a turn-in. In the auditor's office, I just get the cover sheet with the totals to make sure that they're hitting the general ledger.
So whose idea, so you didn't think to ask about the software to see if it was
No,
being-
because the
being
treasurer met
used?
with him.
When did you find out? Was it until you decided, or there was a meeting set up in, what was it, 2011, to close some accounts that
No.
when was it realized that the software, which was, I think, one of the primary reasons to purchase it, efficiency, accountability, when was that discovered? And it was probably in Ed.
When was what discovered?
When someone discovered that the software was not being used, was not being utilized.
When I got the anonymous letter.
So for 3+ years, nobody thought to determine whether this was being used and whether good controls were in place, meaning the software wasn't being used and the information wasn't being communicated to those individuals responsible for it, including the treasurer and your office.
I had trusted the judgment of the treasurer, and when he set it up, and the audits were coming through clean, but I knew after when we talked in November about doing the cash audits that, there's a ton of cash down there. I think I should have the auditors go in because it's such a massive operation to have them go in and take another look and have that be one of the departments for the comprehensive audit.
Which I agree. Knowing that this slipped through the crack year after year after year from this audit firm, does it make sense that that we should continue with this firm? I mean, if it were me, and this happened, and you had to call it to their attention, or an anonymous person actually, no, and they come back with this report, and I don't think it said all that much. Does it make sense to stick with this company? I mean, I understand everything is about money, and they want to go in and do a forensic audit for another $25,000, or we ask them to do other audits. That's an additional $108,000. I mean, what are we getting for $85,000? I understand they come in and do some testing, but it seems like this would have been, and I'm not an auditor, but this would have been something that should have caught, immediately. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And trying to move this, we have several more memos to get through. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick. The central parking audit is they're doing that, that's their own audit that they're doing. They're not really, they don't really have to give us that audit. And
believe
so, and they haven't as yet. And so the question comes up in my mind, did they tell anybody that they were absolutely going to give us a copy of their audit? Did they tell you that?
Yes,
They did.
yes,
They didn't tell you any time, they just said, when we're finished with our audit, we will
Right.
give you a copy of it.
correct.
All right. And as far as you know, or Mr. Moses knows, it's within, their law department has it now. Their legal
As far as I know, right.
department's got it, and
And
we
we'll-
should get it right after that.
We'll see what we can do about calling them up.
Okay.
And
All right. In terms of what Powers and Sullivan did and what they gave us, anybody that read all three documents would have a really hard time believing that they did it completely independently. The audit function of the whole report, which wasn't there, that is what I was interested in, and that would have been the part that would have been independent. But the narrative, if you read that narrative and you read your narrative and Mr. Herbert's narrative, nobody would believe that that there wasn't some discussion about that department. So I just think I don't think it's absolutely correct to be saying that they just acted independently and by themselves. I mean, I think that Powers and Sullivan probably does a good job. As I've told you before, I have a problem with the way that that the bid went out. I really don't think that that you should have the authority to just go out on your own, select a company, and sign them to a contract. I don't understand how that came about. It just seems incorrect to me. And I would think that from your perspective, that because if I was in your job, I would prefer to have the city council confirm or approve the contract. But you didn't do that.
I believe that the Department of Revenue said that the council should take over that role, but I think it's a perfect opportunity for the council to do something along those lines.
It's not a matter of taking over the role. I'm not suggesting that the city council should. What I'm suggesting is that upon having a selection, that you would bring it to the council, or at least keep the council apprised of what was going on. And you didn't do that. It was only when I asked about the contract that I found out that it was for 3 years and that it was already signed. I can remember saying to you, when's it gonna come before the city council? And your response was, I've already signed it for 3 years.
If you want me to do that moving forward, I'll be more than happy to do that. Actually, I'd rather, because then it takes it kind of off all of my shoulders, so.
All right, moving on to the next memo, that was regarding a verbal motion from Councilor Kennedy regarding the parking officials' April meeting. I know we discussed at the regular meeting. Are there any additional questions on it? Councilor Kennedy?
Only this, just a couple of minutes ago, you indicated to Councilor Elliott that you first found out about that they weren't using the metric system when you got the letter. But my understanding is that you would know about it when you met with the department head and the treasurer, because that's when that's what your email to us said. And your memo said that when you had met with them and with the treasurer, that it came about that everything was matching up too perfectly. And so you closed down 5 of the 6 accounts, if I recall, and went forward from there. But then you didn't do anything after that. And a couple of times I've asked, why didn't you take further action? And I have not got a response to that. But I don't even remember that in the anonymous letter that came in, I don't remember there being anything about saying that the department wasn't using the metric system.
That's when we went in and we started looking into it. We did not know that they weren't using the metric system then. We thought that they were, but they were just taking the easy way in utilizing the bank statements. We didn't know they weren't using it. We thought they were using it. When we met on
If you thought...
closing the bank
Yeah.
statements.
If you thought they were just using the bank statements, why would you think that they were using the metric system too?
Because they said they were,
They told you they were?
yes. Mr. Carney said they were.
Any other questions regarding the April meeting? All right, moving on to the next item, and the last one from July 10th, is your outline of schedule through this December. If you would just want to speak to that, or what you plan on what's in that
Oh,
memo.
I just wanted to give the council some sort of an idea of what's going on through the rest of the fiscal year, and just seeing if anybody had any questions on what I'm doing in my timetable.
Anyone have any questions about the work schedule that was provided to us?
I just have,
Counselor Martin?
I don't see how this is differed significantly from prior years. Is there?
It isn't, it's my regular schedule, but seeing we had some new counselors, I figured I'd lay it out so they could see what the timetable is with the audit, with
Fair enough.
the end-of-year reports.
All right, we're getting very close to the regular meeting time. There is one more memo that was referred to us on 8/14 regarding the audit. I think we've all had time to read it, but at this point, I think I'm going to have to recess the meeting, and we'll take that up at a subsequent meeting. Is that all right with the subcommittee? Motion to recess by council until the next available Tuesday. Is that either 2 weeks or 4 weeks? Okay. All right, so we'll be recessing to the next available slot on a Tuesday before a council meeting.
Okay.
So it'll probably be 2 to 4 weeks, I'm not sure the exact.
Did you say on a May memo, or am I hearing it
No,
correctly?
this was referred to us at the August 14th meeting,
Oh, all right.
the
That's
internal audit parking garage.
perfect.
Okay. All right, motion recess by Counselor Kennedy, second by Counselor Martin. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The motion carries. We stand in recess. Thank you.
Hey, Chris.